everybody, we have a great episode today. I have been looking forward to this for a long time. A good friend of mine, Dr. Gideon For-mukwai, who is a PhD and story warrior, author of The Science of Story Selling, How to Win the Hearts and Minds of Your Prospects for Profit and Purpose. And maybe if you get to see him in person and do some of his training, maybe you can get an autographed copy like I got. It's going to be worth big, big money one day, not just the price of the book. So with that, I'm going to let him introduce himself and tell you a little bit about his background, which is varied, and then we'll get into some questions and answers. Welcome, Gideon. Tell us about yourself.
Thank you so much for having me on your podcast, John. It's absolutely a privilege to come here and share some ideas with you. As you know, we go way back, but even before we met, I also go a little bit way back. So, but let's talk about the present first before we look backwards. Okay. I see myself as a story warrior. And people often ask me, what is a story warrior? Well, a story warrior is someone who helps businesses to fight business fires with narrative tools. So we use narrative tools to help businesses, business owners to pollinate ideas, to cultivate trust, and above all, to generate business. And so that's what I do. And I have to admit, I stumbled on this by sheer luck. It is not like I was so wise, I was so talented, I knew this was going to break. No, I stumbled on it by sheer chance. So that's what I've been doing since 2013 full time. And even though my doctorate is in education, I've chosen to stay on this track, to stay closer to the people and sort of build a bridge or sort of pollinate two worlds, the world of academics and the world of business. If the academics are discovering something in their laboratories, I want to be able to share that, build a bridge or pollinate the ideas of there with people in the real world who are busy fighting the real business fires. They don't have the time to fight those fires. So that's what I've been doing. But in essence, historically, I see myself as a product of Africa, produced in Asia, packaged in America, and distributed around the world. So that's how I see myself on a personal note.
What you just said, that one tagline that you just said, is so perfect. Could you give our audience an idea? I may mess up the quote, but I think it was Nathaniel Hawthorne that said, good reading is damn hard writing, right?
Yes, sir.
So I think people sometimes don't realize how much effort is involved in coming up with that eloquent statement.
Yes, sir.
How long did that take you to refine that down to that tight statement that says all of that in so few words?
Thank you. I would say a lot of time. It's taken a heck of a lot of time to fine tune it and get it to a point whereby it is lyrical and it's memorable. Because I've had to borrow from neuroscience. How does a human brain learn? How does the human brain remember information? So I had to find a way to coin it in such a way that first, it remains true and authentic to who I am. And secondly, it's also delivered in such a way that it rolls through the tongue in a way that's natural to me, and hopefully in a way that if somebody hears it, they can say, that's really interesting. I want to remember that. So that tagline, it did not come about by chance. No, it was well thought through. And it's taken me some time to play around with a number of words. Even the one in which I said, I consider myself a story warrior who helps businesses to generate profit by cultivating and by pollinating ideas. Even that too, I've played around with a number of words before I came to that point. I said, but what am I doing in essence? I am a pollinator. Okay, so what does that mean to businesses? Okay, I help to bridge two worlds, the academic world and the real business world by sharing ideas. Therefore, I see myself as a pollinator. And I want to encourage businesses that go out there to also pollinate. But I say that to indicate that even if you see Nike using Just Do It, it is not a product of one day. It's taken quite some time for them to test it out, to play around with it, and see which one augurs well with their true, authentic self.
Yeah, I wanted you to touch on that because almost all the networking events that I go to, when I meet people and they give their introduction, their 30-second commercial, their elevator pitch, what I've noticed is people that I've known for years, it's different all the time. It's like they're constantly trying to tweak it because they're not happy with it, right?
Yes.
And I think
yes.
a lot of that is because they don't know some of the concepts that you know so well. You mentioned, and you didn't, I don't think you actually said alliteration, but you use alliteration all the time,
Yes,
right?
sir.
Those words that sound,
Similar.
rhyming. And
Mhm.
another thing that you're really, really good at doing that I'd like you to talk about a little bit. I went to a training event they were talking about influence and authority. They
Mhm.
said one of the quickest ways to establish yourself, to establish authority is through novelty. And I've
Mm.
seen you use novelty a lot in
Yes.
different presentations that you do. So could
Yes,
you
sir.
talk a little bit about how you use novelty and why it's so important?
Oh, novelty, it's a powerful, let me say, it's a gateway drug to the human brain. Why is it a gateway drug? Gateway in the sense that once you get hooked on it, it is difficult to retract. It's difficult to say, now I don't want this. So novelty, first of all, the human brain, the amygdala, which in many ways I believe is the gateway to the brain, is fascinated by novelty. It hates monotony. So if you use novelty, say a new idea, a new concept, a new strategy, it picks up people's interest. And even marketers use that. They say new approach. When they say new approach, people pay attention and listen. In other words, the media is saying, okay, what is this new approach? But also another dimension is one of the ways to establish novelty is to find a new metaphor. Oh my goodness. A metaphor is just simply one way to introduce a new concept and associate it with something else that is familiar. And so recently I was reading a book that I've read before, but it talks about selling metaphorically. And it actually gave me new perspectives on some of the programs that I'm doing. I feel like I should go and redesign some of them and find new metaphors. But the point I'm making here is if you take novelty seriously, novelty would open up new doors to you. You may be selling the exact same product, but just because you repackage it and you compare it or you contrast it with a new metaphor, it opens up another window for people to pay attention. And so my captivating business storytelling for profit, I'm about to rebrand it or give it another new metaphor, which I believe would allow me to get another permission to reach even to my existing clients or to new ones and say, hey, I got something new, check it out. And it may be the exact same product, but just that I repackage it and give it a new metaphor. So that's something that I think we underestimate in our business communication.
So for those of you that are watching this or listening to this, if you have not been to Gideon's website or his YouTube page, you need to go check it out and see some of the things that he does in his presentations and his training. I've seen them firsthand. We met through a training marketing company, and so we had to watch each other do some training as part of the certification that we were doing. And when he did a few of the things, I won't give it away because I want to make sure they go to your website and your YouTube channel. When he did some of the simple things that he did to get people's attention and keep their attention, I went, whoa, I got to step up my game. This is next level stuff.
You're very
So
kind, bro.
one of the frameworks that I use when I'm talking about communication skills is an acronym called clear communication. And the C in clear stands for context. So you mentioned a few things about that you were made in Africa. Let me see if I remember it. You were made in Africa, something in Asia. packaged in the US and distributed worldwide. I almost got it, right?
Yeah. I can recast it. Yeah.
Yeah, say it
Product of,
again and then I want.
I'm a product of Africa, produced in
Uh-huh.
Asia, packaged in America, and distributed worldwide. And depending on the audience I'm talking to, I can joke, I say distributed worldwide, door to door, or distributed worldwide from mom and pop shop to mom and pop shop. But if I'm talking to serious corporate executives, then I say distributed worldwide from boardroom to boardroom. So depending on who I'm speaking to, I can just add that little tiny tagline again at the end. But back to you.
So taking the framework and thinking about context, take us back to where you started in Africa and tell us a little bit about that story, because I know your story, but our audience does not. So how you got from Africa and your shoe story to where you are today. There's so many great stories in there, but if you could just touch on sort of the broad strokes of your journey.
Okay. I have to say my journey has been a journey that has been blessed by many people. But I was the last kid that anybody expected to succeed in the whole of the Tondik Valley, which is surrounded by gigantic mountains all around. Each time there was a fire, if someone's house had been set on fire in my entire village, I was named the prime suspect. Each time there was a street fight and someone's child's head was bleeding, I was named the prime suspect. Each time someone's dog refused to eat an old dry bone, I was always named the prime suspect. So my reputation preceded me. But I'm so lucky that I was raised by a very hardworking, religious, faithfully driven woman who was a widow raising 5 children. I'm very fortunate I was raised by my mom, who is of blessed memory, but she did not give up even when I was getting a lot into trouble. She did not give up. A lot of times I went to school, they kicked me out. I ended up back home because I wasn't very compliant. And so I give credit to my mom, I give credit to my mentors, and I give credit to a lot of good people, good friends like you who have helped me to be a better person. But my journey was definitely very unlikely. So yeah, I grew up in Africa, went to college, and after college, I worked in my home country, Cameroon, just for 1 year, and then I left. I am the kind of kid that felt the grass is always greener on the other side. And I would do everything to end up on the other side, even if it meant sometimes ending up in trouble. So everybody in my village predicted that, hey, this little kid, he's gonna end up in jail. He's gonna end up in jail. Turns out I grew up and I ended up in America. Now, some people argue, well, it's another form of jail because you're in a big country that you can easily get out of, you can easily go somewhere else. But no, I am lucky, I'm having a blast. I can go. Last October, I just spent a whole month traveling from state to state. It's a big country. I didn't go overseas. I was started in Maine, I went to Ohio, I went to Kentucky, I went to Indiana, I was all over the place. And I'm having a blast, even though I come from fairly humble beginnings.
Okay, well, I appreciate you telling us some of that story. I would for sure have to have you back on because I know some other parts of that story that people would find fascinating, but in the interest of time, we'll leave it at that and we'll come back to that another time. So the L in the framework of clear communication stands for listening. And my personal opinion is that listening is one of the most important communication skills. Could you share with us maybe one thing that you feel is a key to good listening?
Okay, good listening, I think, would really start with curiosity. Why curiosity? Because it enables you to show the other party that I care enough. I care enough to tune in and see where are you coming from? What do you bring to the table? And that, to me, it is the basis of good communication or good collaboration or good participation. Because if you're communicating and I'm looking out and giving you a cold shoulder, that says, I don't care. And we live in what now some people say we live in an attention economy. Attention is a form of currency now. So if you can give that attention to someone, then you're depriving them of whatever good knowledge or good information they have to share with you. And we know information is a powerful weapon, but if you don't have that weapon, you cannot succeed. So I would say, in order to be a good listener, what you should do is express curiosity. It could be expressed by saying, tell me something more about that. Interesting. That sounds really cool. And prompt the other person, not in a prosecutorial way, but in a way that shows, oh my goodness, you are such a fascinating friend. You're such a fascinating human being. I just want to learn something about your world, because your world obviously is probably different from my world. And I want to find out. If people see that or sense that you're a good listener, oh my goodness, they have a lot more respect for you. I've had some friends who are not good listeners, and I don't necessarily enjoy hanging out with them. I'm thinking, you know what? If they don't like my company, I don't necessarily like their company, so I could go do other things. But those that are good listeners, I have always found a way to, listen to them, because, they bring something to the world that I don't possess.
Yeah,
So the key there is curiosity.
The curiosity is, I think, one of the reasons that I gravitated towards podcasting, towards interviewing people.
Love that.
Because I was always that kid that drove their parents crazy with the why, constantly asking questions, but out of genuine curiosity. I wasn't just trying to be a pain. I genuinely was curious.
Yep.
So one of the things that it's an ongoing struggle for me with listening is that I'm so curious that sometimes I feel like I need to butt in when somebody's talking because I want to ask a question about something, right?
Yeah.
Now I've come up with different things to help me to mitigate that. One of which is the most simple thing in the world: just have a pen and a piece of paper, have something to write with always. So that way, if I'm tempted to interrupt, I just jot it down. So that way I can kind of offload it and then refocus on the person.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the area of your expertise broadly is storytelling, but I know with some of the training that you've done, storytelling is just one area that you've done training in. Tell us about some of whether it's a title of an actual workshop or just a topic. What are some of the things that you're working on right now?
Okay, thank you. I'm reframing my captivating story selling for profit. I'm reframing it and I'm calling it the 4 frames of story persuasion. The 4 frames of story persuasion. And the reason I'm doing that is, like I indicated a while earlier, I studied or I took an old book that I've read, and then I bought an audio version. I listened to it, and it's talking about the power of metaphors in creating visuals in the minds of the audience or in the minds of a listener. And I said to myself, you know what? Maybe I should repackage mine. So I'm repackaging my flagship program. I'm calling it the 4 frames. Actually, there are more than 4 frames, but I know that in a reasonable context, if I talk about 10 frames, it might be overwhelming. So I'm choosing 4 frames. Could have even been 3 frames of story selling. And then I started drafting it out now, and I see there's going to be a spiritual frame, there's going to be a symbolic frame, there's going to be a symphonic frame, and all of that. And I'm still drafting it out. So now I have to look at the examples that I've already used over the years and repackage that and put it there, because by listening to this world famous expert or this author, I had a sense that, you know what, captivating story selling is powerful, but the 4 frames of story selling for profit might even be more powerful, but I may be wrong. The marketplace will tell me. So what I'm doing now is get it ready. I'm going to test it in the month of January with a professional coaching group that has approached me, and they want me to talk to them. But more importantly, I'm also going to take it out on the road and start testing it with other places and see if it provides new opportunities for growth.
So now that you've teased us with the 4 frames, what are the 4 frames? Obviously, we don't have time to go into all of them, but what are they?
Oh, the 4 frames are, number 1, the spiritual frame. If you tell a good story, and it almost comes across like you are preaching, but you're not actually preaching, because a story is not you're not a preacher, but it almost comes across like you are such a compelling teller that people will believe you so much. So why spiritual? Because stories energize us to believe. So that's the first frame that I'm exploring. Symbolic frame. The symbolic frame in storytelling would have to do with the symbolism. For example, a cell phone. What does it symbolize? Money. What does it symbolize? Something as tiny as a pair of tweezers. What does it symbolize? And it could be a gold watch. So if you watch rappers tell a lot of stories in their lyrics, but beyond the lyrics, what else are they symbolized? What they're talking about is pretty obvious, that they're talking about accomplishments, they're talking about breakthroughs, they're talking about gangster life and so on. That's one frame. If you look at another form of communication, if you look at it carefully again, you see what are the symbols in the stories that they're telling, whether they're visual or they're auditory or they're kinesthetic, they're also conveying some messages. So that's the symbolic. And then the third one is symphonic. That's the one that I think I'm going to talk about, harmony. How do you create harmony? Harmony is, I see you, you see me, we are related in some ways. We're kind of like, we are very similar. And that breeds what? Rapport. If there's no symphony, then it's jarring. But where there's symphony, there's belief. So my argument is that where you have these frames, you are creating an opportunity for people to believe. And belief is what? Belief is persuasion. Because where there's no belief, there's no relief. And where there's no belief, nobody is going to give you the business. So you first of all have to create a sense of belief. And then that sense of belief is going to give them a moment to be transported away from their present world of dissolution, their present world of dissatisfaction. Then your story transports them to some other world in which they see new realities. It's a new realm. They start to put themselves like, oh, maybe if I really use this new approach, maybe it will help me to solve these existing problems. And then from there, you move in to the next level, which is, hey, you cultivate trust. From that trust, business comes. So the 4th frame, I have not actually resolved it yet. So if it turns out to be S, then it's going to be 4 S's. But if it turns out to be something else, I would leave it that way. But for now, I'm just trying to find a way to create a semblance of something that will be easy for people to remember too. So I'm paying attention to not just the fact that it's comprehensive, but it's also comprehensive in a way that people can easily remember it, because a big part of communication is not just to get the words out, but to be remembered. And if you speak to be remembered, if you tell stories that can be remembered, then they give us the opportunity for others to start selling them or sharing with others. Maybe the first level is just sharing, but the second level, that's when the selling will come in from. But first, it has to be designed in such a way that it's memorable, because if it's memorable, then somebody will talk to their spouse, go talk to their friend. And that's how somebody recommended Woman King to me. He said, if you saw Black Panther, then you love Woman King because it's 10 times better. Until I'm now searching to buy Woman King by word of mouth. The person saw the story, she thought that it was incredible, and now I'm compelled to go watch. And between us, you also recommended a nice movie for me to watch, A Bronze Tale. It was thanks to the fact that that story resonated with you, then you sold it to me, I bought it, I watched it. So that's how we make decisions. If I did not trust you, John, I would not have invested in that movie. But I invested because I know here's a good friend. Here's somebody that means well for me. Here's somebody that's even put money in my pocket and doesn't care about whether I give him a fragment of that. You are a friend that I trust, a brother from another mother, and I was going to take your word, even if it was nothing that is going to amount to anything. But the moment you said it, I said, I got to find time to make it happen. And I'm glad that I did because I enjoyed the movie. So
Well,
to cut a long story short, those 4 frames, I'm hoping that they would transport, they will move an audience from here to there. And here to there is believability, credibility, likability, and ultimately profitability.
I love it. So your framework idea, to me it's a big piece of what we do in training and speaking and presenting. Is exactly what you described, right? It's finding frameworks, models, structure, however you want to call it, checklists, outlines that are there to make things easier to understand, easier to remember. It reminds me of Mark Bowden, one of the gentlemen I was talking to you about before, said in this training, all models are inaccurate, but some are useful. And he was simply making the point that I'm going to present to you a model of communication, a framework that I came up with. And any individual person might say, well, there's an exception to that, or it doesn't work here, or it doesn't work. That's not the point. They're all inaccurate, but are they useful, right? And to the extent that they're useful, then there's something that, that we'll continue to use over and over again.
Yeah.
All right. I know we only have a few more minutes left, which I've got to respect your time. I know you've got another thing that you need to get to.
Yes, sir.
I want to get to, I'll call it the lightning round. So we talked specifically about what you do in your business and some specific things about communication. I've got a few questions that to me are just kind of fun, but at the same time, I think can also add some value. So you talked about the movie that I recommended to you. What is one of your favorite movies and why?
Oh, very interesting. I love the movie Blind Sight. Blind Sight, very much, with Sandra Bullock. I love it so much. Why? Probably because it's a story of redemption. It's a story of cross-cultural understanding. It's a story of humanity. And I'm all about never damning the other side. Never say the other side is bad. Never say anyone is bad, because there's beauty in everyone. If you take just enough time to listen, to observe, to ask thoughtful questions, you see the beauty in the other person. And instead of always backstabbing one another, instead of always hurting one another, we should instead find common ground. We should instead find what are the things that we share in common? What are the things that hold us together? And if you start to look at those, you realize that we have a lot more in common than what holds us apart. So Blind Sight really epitomized that. Here's a kid that is literally out of luck, out of time, but a random family jumps in and comes to this kid's rescue. And that demonstrates in a very powerful way that the world is not all indifferent, that the world is not all intolerant, but also it calls on each one of us to be like that family that was able to reach out to this kid and help him out. And turns out the guy grew up to be a phenomenal, a high achiever. And so when you're extending a hand, you never know whether you're extending a hand to success or failure, but the best you could do is extend a hand. And the other one that I also have liked very much is Guess Who? For some reason, I like movies that involve people of different backgrounds. Guess Who? And that was, it was Ashton Kutcher and Dwayne Wade's wife. I don't know what's the name of the lady.
Is that
I don't know.
Is that the remake of Guess Who's Coming to Dinner?
I think so. It was a remake.
Yeah.
And it was a movie in which a Black family was resisting a young lady. No, it was Zen.
Oh,
what's her name?
Zoe Saldana.
Zoe, Zoe.
Yeah, the one that was
something.
in gosh, we just saw it at Disney World. The Avatar. She was an Avatar
Yes,
movie,
yes,
right?
she was
Yeah,
an
yeah.
Avatar. That's the lady. So she and Ashton Kutcher, I thought, man, they're phenomenal actors, just like Sandra Bullock, phenomenal, like so good. And the way they executed it, it really touched me in a special way. Ashton and Zoe and Sandra, these are these are all my all-time favorites. But again, that story really touched me. So probably is the first movie I ever bought. I took my own money when I bought the DVD, and I still have the DVD somewhere in my archives. For Blindside, I did not buy it in DVD form, but I went and watched it and I loved it. But I'm not so much a movie guy.
Interesting.
I consume knowledge in other forms. I tend to prefer books more than movies, and I prefer comedies too, very much, or informative podcasts, informative programs more than movies. Movies because they have been over dramatized to a point that I feel like it doesn't look like reality anymore, and too much dramatization it deprives me of an understanding that says, oh, that looks like reality. And if it's too far from reality, it's like, nah, I don't want to do that. So maybe those are my two favorites.
So you have now put that one on my list because I've seen The Blind Side, but I've not seen Guess Who, so I'm gonna have to watch that on,
No,
on your
really
recommendation.
good. I think you should check it out.
You mentioned humor. Who is somebody that you think, and I was already thinking about asking you this, but then you kind of rolled right into it with part of your answer. But you use a lot of humor in your presentations and your training. Who is somebody that you think is really funny? Like whether it's an actor, comedian, whatever.
I have a long list. You have how much time do you have?
However
Okay,
much
let
time
me
you
start
got,
with my
buddy.
favorite. Okay. This guy right here, Adam Sandler, he's my favorite. So when I bought it,
Interesting.
I thought I was gonna see his writings inside, but guess what I got inside? It's an empty book, but because it's Adam Sandler on his name on the back, I bought it. It's just there. It's nothing inside. But with his name on the cover, I had to buy it. I just like that guy's sense of humor so much. He doesn't take himself too seriously. It's almost like kind of wobbly, kind of like a kid-like humor. I like that. I love Chris Rock too very much. Almost the two of them, Chris Rock and Adam Sandler, they're like some heroes to me. Different styles nonetheless. Ellen also very interesting. I don't like the kind of humor or humorists that make other people to feel uncomfortable. I find that these three, they're very they come from a place of humility. They're not stabbing, they're not hurting, they're not jabbing. I have some examples of those that I would not even if their show is for free, I'll not walk in because their humor is too toxic. So
who
I
would
really
you
like sorry.
Who would you not see even if I gave you tickets for free?
There is it's a black comedian. He curses like, oh my goodness, he curses a lot. I can't remember his name. My goodness, no. He performed in my college town in Reno, Nevada. And the first time I went, I stuck my ear in, I listened for a bit. I'm like, okay, no, this is not for me. I went out, I ran out. So in the current context, I love the Kevin Hart's, I love the Joe Rogans, I love the those are the guys that I really, if I see something, if they drop something, I want to watch. If not for nothing, I take away their ability to use characters, to use different pieces. I'm not a big fan of Eddie Murphy. Granted, he's high up there, and I also listen to the other guy, the very famous black guy that was paved the way. But I'm not a fan of his. What's the name of the one that was on there before Eddie Murphy?
Richard Pryor?
Richard Pryor. I'm not a fan of his. Not at all. Not at all. I've listened to his stuff, listened to it. I don't get it. It's jarring to me. But
So,
yes, Adam Sandler, Chris Rock, Ellen DeGeneres, Kevin Hart, Tiffany Haddish. I like their style of comedy very much. And the list goes on.
So it sounds like one of the common threads I'm noticing is you don't seem to like profanity. Is that
Yes?
Is that a fair? Okay.
I resent profanities.
Okay.
Resent it. Like it's like
So that
You
would help
can
me
eat.
edit my list of things I would recommend to you.
No, no,
'cause
no,
if
no.
that's what this
In
is pretty-
fact, the cleaner the better, but it's not like I don't need it to be a perfect meal. I don't want it to be so
Right.
so bland. I still need some give me some a little you know, little something in it. Put in a few stuff here that are gonna be biting my tongue. But if it's too colorful, I don't think that I like that.
So go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
So yeah, I definitely like okay, something. Oh my goodness, what did I chew? What is that? Is that a piece of piece of fish, a piece of spicy jalapeno, something? Okay, yeah, that makes it interesting. But if it's all bland, just too clean, it's also not good. But what I don't like is take it in and it just feel like you're chewing a hairy, dirty, ugly, nasty, smelly, horrible. No. That's too much. That's like, wait a minute. People got families. We got children. We got nephews. I could be watching to my nephews. What are you saying? I'm going to be sitting there feeling like, what kind of example am I to my family? So no.
Right.
So I like it with a good balance. I like Tina Fey. Oh, I like Tina Fey.
Oh, I like Tina Fey.
Like
too.
Tina Fey, and I like Melissa
She's
McCarthy.
brilliant.
Oh my God. Yeah, Tina Fey is right up there too. Right up there.
So talking about food, I just so you got my wheels spinning now. I just came back from Disney World, had a vacation at Disney World, and my favorite, I should be 600 pounds. I love food so much. Epcot, where you have the taste of the world, right? They have these like a different countries
Yep.
all around the world and different like small plates, you know, like tapas.
Mhm.
What is where do you live now? You're in
Dallas, Texas.
Dallas, Texas. So
Mhm.
if I came to visit and you and I were to go out to someplace there in Dallas that's like one of your favorite places to eat, where would we go? And what would we have?
That is a very tough one, John. Here's why. Maybe I'm just cheap. Maybe it's my upbringing, but you'll be surprised to know this, bro. I seldom go out for a meal. Seldom. Unless I
Okay.
want to impress somebody.
Do you
I'm
cook?
not the kind, and first, the fact that, okay, part of it is that my wife doesn't eat American food.
Okay.
And she's lived here almost close to 20 years now. She has never tasted a burger. She's never eaten a pizza. The most American thing she has ever eaten is fries. That's how bad it is. So I can't say I can impress her with food. So tend to just eat home cooked African meals, or some. Once in a while, I do my tuna sandwiches myself. So I found one place last week that I went to by sheer luck, by sheer coincidence. I went to a place that serves seafood. I think it's called Truckload. It was awesome. It was amazing.
Oh.
And I'm thinking, since my wife likes seafood, when she comes from Oregon, I'm going to take her there next week. That's the one place that I'll bring a friend to, because I've tested it and that's the only time they've gone out. Now, granted, we've been down here only for a short period of time, but instead, I could do a home cooked something for you, something African, and then you get to see some spices that are
Oh, dude, you're
that
speaking
are
my
very,
language.
very unfamiliar, but also very powerful. And let me put it this way. When you travel, you start to see that different cuisines have different strengths. African cuisine, they have a lot of spices. And the next close people to, I would say, the Indians, and their cuisine is somewhat similar too. So my point being, I could do a home cook something for you, for a friend, for anybody. And that's what we love to do if you're in this area. But also, if we have to go out, then we'll go to this one place that I've tested and I found out it was good. When we live in Oregon, I had a couple of choices too, but we had lived there for 8 years. So we had enough time to experiment. So far, I've not experimented much. And I've tended to just do my tuna sandwiches and eat. But credit to my American friend, Mr. Nathaniel Forbes. Oh my goodness. I got the best tuna sandwich recipe any human being has ever made from Mr. Forbes. I got it in Singapore. Mr. Forbes is now retired. He's now back in Minneapolis. And I got it from him and I brag about it because everywhere I've made it, people fight. People fight to eat my tuna sandwich. And I can tell you, John, When you come to town, you got somebody coming here, send them to me, I make a little drop of it. They're never going to go away.
I made a note. I'm going to email you for the recipe.
You better know too if you're coming down
Tell me about
Texas. Okay, cool.
Tell me about an African dish that you make, because that is actually, we were just talking about when we were in Disney, we were looking at all the different countries.
Mhm.
As we would look at the menu, I'd say, yeah, I've had that before, I've had that before, I've had that before. And there were a few countries where I thought, I don't even know what goes in that. Not only have I not had it, I don't know what spices are in it. I don't know what flavors there are. What is like a typical dish that you might make at home?
Thank you. See, there are, so Cameroon is 25 million people with 300 different ethnic groups that are together, but they're so different. I kid you not. They're so different in their culinary tastes that you wonder, how did they ever live side by side? I'm not joking. You go 300, less than, in fact, about 100 miles, you meet another tribe that eats so different and speaks a very different language. So of the things that I grew up observing, and I think that they are cross-cultural, the one thing that I could also do, and I know how to cook it besides my wife, is jollof rice. Jollof rice is somewhat common across Africa. And it just simply means it's like a kind of fried rice. They fry it with different things like green beans, they fry it with onion, they fry it with crayfish, they fry it with carrots, and so on and so forth, green peas and all of that. And I think I've mastered that, and I can brag about it, but of course, not as good as the wife, or not as good as my sister-in-law in DC, who is like, if she cooks it here, people, the whole neighborhood people want to break in just so that they can have a taste of it. She's that good. If you put the ingredients side by side, she cooks, anybody else cooks, she is gonna whoop you. She's gonna whoop you so badly because for whatever reasons, her hands are good at that. So yes, I can cook jollof rice, but if I hear she's in the neighborhood, I'm not even gonna touch the stove because I don't want, not gonna be, why just instead gonna go down on my knees and beg her to cook it for me. The other thing that I can also cook is plantains. Plantains, depending on whether you want it as a snack, I can do good plantain chips, sweet ones and unripe ones. I can do that. Fried ones, I can do that. But if you want to taste my home staple meal, it is cooked plantains with dried fish and bitter leaf. Or it's a herb out there called bitter leaf. We may not necessarily have it here, but you can replace it with spinach or with some other leaves. And as long as you cook it well with palm oil and you have the right mix of salt and good stuff like crayfish, it comes out. You eat it, you love it. Now, I had a lady visit us from South Africa last week. She came with her daughter. My wife wasn't here. I cooked for them, and she's not from my tribe. She's from a neighboring tribe, but they've adopted it. She said she thought it was really well cooked. She did not believe that I was the one. She thought I was maybe bragging too much, that maybe my wife cooked it and left it. I said, no, please give credit where it's due. So my point being, the first go-to for a non-African friend would be the jollof rice, because it's very light. It's cross-cultural, people eat it anyway. Or I can do the plantains if you really want to have something African. And then the last option would be I can do my groundnut soup. Groundnut soup is peanut sauce, which I've also mastered. And I can mix it with curry from India, and you eat it, you have no idea what you've eaten, but you're like, okay, can I have a little bit more? Can I have a little bit more? It's very tasty, and I can do it with fish. I can do it with beef, depending on what are your culinary
Dude, you're making me hungry.
preferences. Yeah.
You're reminding me of my mother's mother. My grandmother she could like take a shoe and make it taste good. Some people just have this artistry of knowing just how much of what different things to put together, how to cook it. But I think it's fascinating that plantains are one of the foods you mentioned, because many Hispanic cultures make plantains. I make them at home sometimes.
There you go.
Both ways. I've never made the chips,
Yeah.
but I make when you get the green ones and
Mhm.
you fry those, deep fry.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Those in Panama, where my mother grew up, we call patacones.
Ah,
Cubans call them tostones.
I
Um,
see.
I think more cultures call them tostones than anything else. And then the ones that you fry, you get the really ripe ones,
Mhm.
and then you fry those like at a low temperature, and they get
Mhm.
sweet.
Oh man, those ones are
Those are
really,
like candy.
those are
Oh,
delicious. Those are
all right.
so delicious. And when I go into a Cuban restaurant, I know I'm always going to find something that I can eat. And if I go into a Latin American restaurant, as long as it's plantain, I know I'm going to be cool.
Yep.
I'm not too familiar with everything else, but once I find that, I'm good. And it's something that I love Cuban cuisine because there's always plantain around. And in
Yep.
Africa, or at least in Cameroon, we are known for plantains more than any other tribe. And other tribes learn it from us. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's one of those things that made the Great Voyage and then
Yeah.
spread throughout, because clearly no other tribe in Cameroon cooks it. And they got it in Ghana, but they don't eat in the shape that we eat it. They do the powder form. They eat the powder form. Yes, in Ghana,
Good.
they don't eat it like you do, like you and I do. They turn it into powder, and then they use that powder to eat it with soup or with a sauce. And so it
Interesting.
is quite fascinating how different cultures have
Yeah.
evolved with this some of these transcendental food crops. And somebody from Zimbabwe, by the way, Zimbabwe has no plantains. There are their climate is more temperate, so they don't grow it. She wrote a blog. She's a very famous African blogger. She wrote a blog recently about plantain on LinkedIn. Believe me, it attracted hundreds and hundreds of comments, and I was one of the first to talk about the fact that it is very delicious. And she said she has found it because she worked in West Africa, Central Africa, and she said it's a small plant that has so many uses. That's why
Yeah,
she
it
was
does.
praising it, and it's easy to cook. So it brought in both people from African descent, people from all over the place, and they were commenting that it is something that is genuinely delicious if you know how to cook it. So yeah.
Well, that's interesting that from such distant places,
Yes.
some of those similarities, which we
Yeah.
could find those in all areas of culture.
Yes,
I'm
indeed.
watching the clock here. I know you have another time commitment, so we need to wrap up.
Okay. Yeah.
Tell everybody where they can find you, whether you want them to find you on LinkedIn, your website, where do they find you? How do they hire you?
Okay. I am specifically of block 5007 block 007 in Rockwall, Texas. Okay, don't look for that. Don't look for that. All right. There's no block 007 in Rockwall, Texas. No, I online. Let's talk about online.
Yes.
If you go to www.storywarrior.us, www.storywarrior.us, that's where you can find some information about me. But if you are more of the kind of person that likes to have the personal touch, which I love, then use this number, 703-477-1570. 703-477-1570. I am never too busy to reply to a text. And if you are of the generation that believes in text like myself, right on the border, I would always reply to anybody that has something. And yes, we get busy, but more importantly, I want to have genuine interpersonal connections, because it is through such connections that my life has amounted to something. And I never want to lose touch of that. However busy I am, if I get a text from someone, I find the time to reply it. Or by email, Gideon@storywarrior.us. Gideon@storywarrior.us. I'm not super active on Twitter. I am increasingly building up some momentum on LinkedIn, where I have more than 13,000 followers. And I'm also building momentum around YouTube. And there's a new fag in town called a new fad called YouTube Shorts, which is a couple of seconds long. And I'm getting on that bandwagon like crazy. So you would see me or hear me saying some things about power of storytelling on YouTube Shorts. And I'm very grateful to Mr. Sanchez, a brother from another mother, for giving this opportunity for me to share 1 or 2 ideas with you. I hope you found them useful in some way.
Well, brother, thank you for sharing your time. I want to point out, you are the first person to give out a phone number when I asked what's the best way for people to contact you. So for those of you watching and listening, think about what that tells you about the type of communication that you get when you talk to this gentleman right here. At the top of his game, every time I look at his content, I think, I got to step up my game. I got to try to keep up with Gideon.
Bro.
Thank you for your time, man. I would definitely love to have you back another time. I know you have another time commitment. We got to respect that. And
yes, appreciate
that is it for this time. And we will see you next time.
And next time, we may even talk about the shoeless, clueless, and hopeless journey, and how somebody found a pair of shoes at the age of 10. Looking forward to that. Thank you so much, John.
Dude, that is a perfect way to wrap up. See you next time, everybody.
Peace, brother.